Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. Welcome to the Venture Outfitter. I'm Kevin Coyne. Excited to be here with you today. Been having a good conversation with our community kind of before kicking things off, and I'm always excited about getting to do that with y'all. Welcome to the Venture Outfitter. Part of what we're here to do is entrepreneurs working together in community to support each other for taking on big challenges together. And today is going to be interesting because we're going to talk a little bit more about productivity, because I think entrepreneurs are always looking to become more productive. Thank you to DualWorks, one of our sponsors. We'll start announcing more sponsors, but Linda Blackman and her team at DualWorks is where we office. We have work setups, several different locations in Austin and in other parts of the world, but this is where we hang our hat. And thank you for Linda making it possible for us to be here and to be online. And at some point, we're going to have her come back and tell us how her business is doing, but we'll do that very, very soon. The Venture Outfitter, just to race on through some of this stuff. If you're not in our community already, make sure that you sign up with us. We have two different teams that are working together, setting up our Mighty Network and setting up our Facebook group and things like that. And this is going to become much clearer about how to interact with us. But I want to make sure that you know about that. If you're launching sales, especially whether you're in the country or outside of the country, outside of Texas, that is, but you want to take advantage of the community, please do. And make sure that to get involved online, you actually don't have to spend any money to get started. We will be starting to message more about our network level, and several of y'all are taking advantage of that. And if you want to ask about that, please do, and we'll tell you more soon. Coming soon, myself and Monica Paredes are going to be representing Tech Ranch in the Czech Republic. We'll be in a city called Brno, which is I guess it should say the Czech Republic. The JIC is a partner organization. When you're building a bridge between two locations, you need a firm base on one side, and you need a firm base on the other side. Our partner in the project that we're launching in the Czech Republic is a incubator called the JIC. And I'm real excited to be working with them. We've been talking and working with them over the last 4 years, including during the pandemic. This will be the first time that we'll have a team deployed there to find out, to work more with the entrepreneurs face to face in a larger group. I personally have reviewed 500 companies from the area. Real excited about the technologies that are coming out there, and we'll tell you more. We'll actually be doing a on-site while in the Czech Republic kind of details. More about that soon. And then the Texas EU Business Summit is on May 12th. And we're going to review a couple of our Central European bridges and talking about what builds a bridge, how we can actually take advantage of that whole setup. We'll tell you more as that comes, as we get to that point. I wanted to stop for a second because, we have had some, everyone knows that I'm very pro-Ukraine. And we're going to actually have some other Ukrainian speakers. In fact, we're reaching out to some of the Ukrainians, Germans, Lithuanians that are actually in different ways involved in the front lines supporting Ukraine. But I had to stop for a second. On my refrigerator at home, I have two magnets that were given to me when I was in the region called Tumen. There's a city called Tumen, and there's a region called Tumen in Russia. It's in Siberia. And I just wanted to reflect for a second when I saw it the other day. I'm like, we have several Russian entrepreneurs that I became really attached to. This was end of November, beginning of December 2019. Yeah, it was a hard time to be in Siberia, but it was really enriching. And, as much as I've got a big concern about what Putin has decided to do, I wanted to make sure. I think that some of our Russian entrepreneurs actually still hear the VO Weekly, even though a lot of the communications have obviously been cut. But I did want to go ahead and stop for a second and say to our Russian entrepreneurs that we worked with as part of the Texas-Russia bridge in December of 2019 and then into 2020, that I'm thinking about you. I keep these two hearts. They've actually been on my refrigerator since you guys gave them to me. And I'm hoping that whatever happens with the war, that it comes to a peaceful end and that we get to have vodka and whitefish again together in celebration of working with each other. And it saddens me that that Putin is being an autocrat, and to all the intelligence that I've gotten to read, the open source intelligence since I'm paying attention a lot to what's happening in the region, it's pretty clear that there was a single mind that made the choice to go to war, that even a lot of Putin's people around him didn't think he was actually going to go to war. And so for our entrepreneurs that are part of that bridge, I'm thinking of you, and I look forward to the moment that we actually get to, break bread, have vodka and whitefish again, hopefully in celebration of better times. And what I want to do is go ahead and reintroduce the conversation that we started last week. Part of what I was talking about was that I'm getting out onto my stand-up surfboard more onto the water, as well as taking more time out for productivity and things like that. And I talked about this last time because I mentioned to you all that I met the Finnish ambassador to the United States, the guy in the middle that's cutting the ribbon for the company that is represented there. M-Files just opened up an office here in Austin. Their Northern American headquarters is here. But the thing that I thought would be good is to start talking more about productivity. And so I read a lot, and I realized that one of the things that might be valuable, we're going to start having more experts, more entrepreneurs in the spotlight, as well as more experts sharing. But I thought for today's time, and you guys can give feedback about this if you like this kind of interaction, about starting to look at some of the latest research on productivity. Now, many of you guys, you entrepreneurs, are already productivity experts because you have to be, right? You have to be, because you're building companies with not enough resources and not enough funds and not enough this and that and the other thing. And so you're figuring out how to be as productive as possible. But I thought what might be of interest is to just hop straight into the just reviewing some of the articles that I've been reading and give you kind of a quick synopsis. And maybe one out of the 5 that we go over might be of value to you. And so for the follow-up on the show notes as well, Jello is going to post into the chat session. He'll also post into the LinkedIn area some of the show notes, or at least a part of the show notes that point to the articles that we're going to be going over. That way, if you decide, hey, that's interesting, I want to go a little bit farther with this, you can read the 1 out of 5 things. Now, I probably read, I don't know, I've got my reader set up, so I'm reading probably 20 things a day. So this is just a short synopsis of some of the things I thought was most interesting, because they're kind of breakaway research that's all happened in the last couple of years. Jello, I think if you're posting, for those of y'all that are not in the actual session, if at all possible, Jello too, I think that the links, we'll go along that. Okay, you're posting the links here too. Perfect. Yeah, that way you can follow up and share in that. And please post it into the LinkedIn session as well, because I think that this is important research. So the first we talked a little bit about last time, and the Breaking Free of the Cult of Productivity. This is a podcast that is from Harvard Business Review. The podcast is about 26 minutes long, and the author is launching a book, and you can read about her book and things like that. But the most important points that I took out of what was there was this idea that she calls productivity guilt. It's a really interesting thing. Like, if you're not being productive, then you should feel guilty. And if you're not working especially from the American frame of mind. And I see this in some of the other countries as well. And when we get into the discussion, we'll have a little bit more discussion about, you guys will actually say, hey, this is what I feel about that. It'd be interesting to have you share what you're thinking about in the same areas. But this idea about productivity guilt, that you should allow flow. And the biggest distinction out of the whole podcast was putting value on thinking versus value on doing. A relaxed mind, like after I go to stand up paddleboard or something like that, can do in 5 minutes what I might suffer through in an hour of trying to bust something out. It's really interesting. Like something like this happens, then instead of sitting behind my computer trying to write through some crap, I actually went to stand up paddleboard. Then I used my voice recorder, recorded something, transcribed it, sent it to Jello, and it's done. So finding the value of thinking and getting the mind into the right place, that's a simple example of that. And then being okay with procrastination. The author mentions two things about this. Sometimes we have procrastination because our mind's not ready yet. And sometimes we have procrastination because, we're really just trying to avoid whatever we're trying to avoid. Yeah, avoiding is one thing, but a lot of times, and I think I come from like this as well, that sometimes, I shouldn't have productivity guilt because my mind's not ready. It's like we just haven't figured something out yet. Just allow that to be, versus the productivity guilt of I've got to just bust through this. There's two different types there. And I think the main thing is understanding where is the procrastination coming from. The article is really interesting. You can listen to it. You can read it as well. Listening to it is quite interesting just because Harvard Business Review does a really great job. And you've got the link in the chat to share. We'll go over all of these and then we'll have a discussion about them. So, grab your notes, make questions that we'll pose to each other so that we can go back and forth with that. The second thing was coming out of Microsoft research. Microsoft research says that with the decentralization where, everyone went through their homes to work from their homes, that there's been this thing that's happened where we're now seeing a third peak of work. You'll see the first two peaks, like when we're oriented around the 9 to 5 job, was these set of peaks, right? There's one here. But then secondly, that they noticed just by chat messages that there's a third peak. Now it's a small peak, so that means that not everyone's doing it. But one of the things that they noticed by looking at their chat records about when usage and communication was going on is that after the kids were asleep and maybe after spending some family time, or the article, the author actually speaks a little bit about this to say that they're supposing that people are getting used to this natural flow. Okay, why am I sharing this? I've always been a night person. And back when I was a software developer, earlier in my career as an entrepreneur, I was a software developer. I would be radically over the top productive between, say, 10 o'clock to midnight to 2 or 3 in the morning. And then when I became a chief executive officer, and acted more built a different type of business where I stopped writing software, I noticed that really, I was like, I felt guilty. Wait, I'm supposed to be in this frame of 9 to 5. I think that a lot of us, especially during the pandemic, started following our normal life cycles. And so why am I sharing this? I think the most important thing is just to know that this is a natural thing. And there is a little bit of blending between work and home that's happening. But if you allow yourself to be aware of what's happening, like if you get over the productivity guilt of the previous, like we talked about in the previous article, it's interesting because you can then end up being more productive. Now, as an example, I see one of our entrepreneurs from Nigeria on with us in the session right now. And one of the things that's happened is as he's waking up in Nigeria, in Legos, as an example. Every once in a while, there'll be a message that we'll have that's around 11 till 2 in the morning, sometime in there, where I'm getting this whole productivity thing about getting to talk to other entrepreneurs around the world. And initially I was like, oh, this is bad. This is bad. But the research shows this is not bad. It's natural. As long as you're kind of staying, you're not just overworking yourself, there's a natural bump that's happening. That's the second article to look into. And the main thing that I'm trying to point to is that if this naturally fits your schedule, this is something that's arising out of the positive side of what happened with the COVID economy and the decentralization of work. And so I think that that's really interesting to see happen. Third article, that there are a lot of companies in the United States, especially, that after the Great Resignation, 40 million people out of the 350 or a million or so in the United States have said, I'm not going to go back to that old job. And so a lot of companies are looking at, and this is a TV article, you can watch it or read it. They're saying, hey, I'm not going to go back to that job. And so companies are actually having to sweeten the pot a little bit. And also they were having to work on retaining their workers more. Part of what happened in this is a lot of them are going to a 4-day work week. Now, our friends in Denmark already know this, right? There's been examples of this happen in Iceland, Denmark, and in the Netherlands, where they've shifted a lot of their people to a 4-day work week. And what's being found, you think, well, wait, that's 8 hours of lost work. Well, the truth is that there's actually been more productivity that are happening because people are getting to relax. Now, I'm working on this, and one of the things that's happened is I'm trying to create my Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays so that, like Fridays these days, the way that I'm implementing it is I'm still meeting with people and still doing work activities. Like, as an example, I'm going to be working with some of y'all that know our entrepreneur, Diego, who started a company called Trip Loop. He is originally from Coahuila, Mexico, and was involved in Tech Ranch years and years ago. Tomorrow at 4:00, maybe with stiff drink in hand, there's going to be a conversation, over a happy hour. That's going to be a work conversation. But I'm implementing this into saying, okay, on my Fridays, I'm not going to have those crazy, I got to be productive, jamming behind a computer kind of meetings. I'm actually going to, or working on reports. I'm actually still, quote unquote, working, but I'm going to a 3-day entrepreneur work week or a 4-day entrepreneur work week where on Fridays, I'm implementing this with more, like I don't have any more morning meetings. Like, if you want to meet with me in the morning, you're going to have to figure out where where I live and knock on the door, because I'm not going to have any Friday morning meetings. So like I can start the day a little bit softer, but then implementing it as where I have meetings one-on-one with people that are more conversational, social, but still driving the business forward. I think it'll be a hard day. It'll be a cold day in hell when I finally stop working on Fridays. But this is a different way that I'm interpreting this article about, because now the other thing that was really interesting about the article, and it was very US centric, but it says that Americans are burnt out. Like, they totally got burnt out by what happened during COVID. And I expect that this is something that's true for the whole world, but it's very, 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 very pronounced in the United States, with 40 million people saying they're not going to go back to work, or not going to go back to the old job. They're finding a different job. So yeah, tear into it if you'd like. And like I said, this one is also a video, and it's pretty short and sweet. You can read about it as well. And then part of our team that we work with from Temple, Texas, when I was expressing, there's been some of y'all know that I've had a family member, actually my mom. She doesn't always like me to tell anyone about her, but was in the hospital on Sunday and Monday and Tuesday. She had to go to the ER, and I expressed with one of the principals of this one company, who sometimes joins us here, was expressing to David Sprague, how I was sad about that. And then I actually felt guilty about it. I remember in the conversation, and he shared this article with me that says that part of what holds us back, especially in the United States, we have this, in the researcher behind this says that we've got this, they were running a workshop and said, how's everyone doing? And everyone's like, we're pumped. We're doing great. We're just like freaking crushing it. But the truth is that if you have this like forced positivity in your workplace, whether it's your company or the people you're interacting with, if you have this forced positivity, it's actually really another productivity block, because we're humans. We have a full range of emotions. In my case, I had something that was kind of really took me off guard. And just by being able to share it, it creates more empathy around us, more healthy environments. I really enjoyed this article as well, and I appreciate David and his one of his team members, Amy, for sharing the article with me. Because the great thing about that is that, as an example, David has been a great support for, just as we're teaming up, his organization and Tech Ranch are teaming up on a project that in a few weeks we'll be telling about, that's going to involve multiple countries, as well as some interesting stuff happening here in Austin. And the fact that there was real authenticity was really valuable to me. And the thing that I actually want to suggest is, in our culture of the community that we're building, since a lot of us don't have large groups of entrepreneurs that we're interacting with, I don't want to have this false and forced positivity. Screw that. Let's actually be authentic with each other. And with the people that are here I think everyone that's here in the actual audience, or not the audience, but like our community, one of the things I love is that we're kind of authentic with each other. It's like, hey, I'm having a screwed up day, blah, blah, blah. And I love that, because one of the ways of getting through something, like, it's like Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going, don't stop in hell. And one of the ways to keep on going is, if you have an emotion that's blocking you from getting to the other side, one of the things that we can do as a community is to share that authentically and be supportive towards it. Not in a coddling way. I'm not talking about coddling. It's like there's a difference between that and just saying, hey, this is where I'm at. Thank you for standing by my side, because, entrepreneurship, it is the loneliest job that you'll ever find. Until you actually have the whole company set up in a way that you have lots of different support system around you. Life of an entrepreneur is a pain in the, what? Did anyone notice how well I'm censoring myself today with all the words that I've been saying? I want a gold star.
Almost like you're fasting.
It's almost like I'm fasting. Yes. Ramadan Mubarak for everyone that celebrates Ramadan. And yes, I am fasting in celebration with my Muslim friends and brothers. I am observing, to some extent, not fully, Ramadan. So it's almost like I'm fasting with trying to like clean up my language and my food and stuff like that. Okay, well, with that, one final article from actually a Tech Ranch entrepreneur that I just absolutely love, and I just amazed how far she's gone. Maura Neville Thomas, who's the author of the book Attention Management. We're going to get her. She used to teach one of the Venture Forth courses. She actually taught like one of the evenings for the longest time. Out of the 45 cohorts, I think she was involved in at least 20 of them. She's now an international level speaker, and she said that she's going to come back, but I'm going to just touch on her work a little bit. One of the most important things she said that about a month ago, she started asking people on her list how they're managing their attention, because everyone's really focused on managing. A lot of people focus on managing their time versus their attention. And she noticed in the research she was doing And I just, Jello, make sure that she's on the list. I don't know if I put a Trello card for her, but she said that she's going to come back and she'd love to be with us. And this will be a session that everyone should make sure they're on, because interacting with her, she is a world level expert for not just time management. She started with time management. She actually started working with David Allen from the Getting Things Done fame. She was part of his team. And then she said, screw that, and took off and started working more on this. So she comes up with this idea of the 4 quadrants of attention management for productivity. The first one is you're reactive and you're distracted. And that's like I look at my phone and I'm back and forth and I look back and forth. And it's not how we normally are driving ourselves, but it's a problem, because we're not able to go through that deep focus. Now, as an example, one of the ways that I'm trying to practice what she's pointing to is yesterday on my Wednesdays, I'm trying to just do a work session where I think I had, a 4-hour block. Sometimes it can get all the way to an 8-hour block before I talk to anybody. I just, little Kevin, the engineer, like going underground and working on all the paperwork that he really should have been doing. But you can't really do if you can't do like a deep strategic piece if you keep on getting text after text after text. Second thing was flow. Flow is we'll actually have one of the guys, both a bunch of that we've done. We launched the Texas Hungry Venture Bridge, and Chickham. I always forget how to say his name. But Professor Chickmasavali, who just died a couple of years ago, or actually last year, he died last year, right as I was getting to go to Hungary, world level expert that talks about flow. We're going to actually have one of his acolytes, one of his students, come talk to us about flow. We'll have Maura do this first, but then I want to have one session where we go much deeper into flow. That's like the perfect place to be, but you really have to manage things to get into flow. The third thing is daydreaming. There's a value of daydreaming. There's a value of unplugging, getting on your stand-up paddleboard or whatever you do, and actually just allowing your mind to float like that. And then the fourth state that she noticed is focused and mindful. Now, the chart that I'm actually sharing is available on that webpage that's being shared. It's also involved in her book, Attention Management. And like I said, Jello is going to be scheduling with Maura. Maura's already said that she's good to go on joining us, and we'll do that shortly in the future. And that will be a session that, although you can listen to the video, Maura is extremely interactive. She's great about how she'll help address issues for each one of you about what you might be up against, because it takes us like a special insight about how to work through those different issues, because how you manage your attention is different than how I manage my attention. Everyone has kind of a unique thing. So that's coming soon, but the webpage will give you a taste about that if you're interested. All right, with that, every time I have a black slide, that reminds me that let's just connect with each other. And I know that there's already been some chats that are going back and forth. It said that we have some questions back and forth. So let me just open it up. Who has questions about this, or what? I'd like to hear from a couple of different people. Hey, this is the article that resonates most with me because you've looked into it deeper, or perhaps there's something that you'd like to bring. Why don't I tell you what? None of y'all have come off of mute yet, so come off of mute, or I'm gonna actually start calling on y'all. Inez, I would love to hear from you.
Okay, here I am.
Yeah, I know you.
I feel comfortable going first. I just don't want to take everybody's space.
Yeah, no. We want to hear you. We want to hear from you. I know you've done a lot of research on this type of stuff, and you actually have training, coaching training in this. Is one of the articles, do you find one that resonates with you more than the other ones that you might say something about?
Yeah. I like the 4 quadrants. That's something that I've never seen before. And I like the way how quadrants make things, concepts that are complex, easy to grasp, just picking two variables and seeing how they look like when they're in intensive or low. And what I like about it is putting it in perspective, because there's a natural tendency to categorize things between good and bad. And so, and that's also where the guilty around just doing nothing comes from. It's like, okay, it's bad to do nothing. So particularly the symbol that you put in the middle, like, okay, let's rotate. And we're circulating around the days. So I remember my first coaching teacher, Randy DiStefano, talking about the concept of oscillating. And she illustrates it in her quadrant, which is we're going to alternate states throughout the day. So we're going to have moments of distraction, and we're going to have moments of flow and moments of focused work and moments of daydreaming. And I think it's very useful, at least for me, it has been very useful to be aware of my energy levels throughout the day. Differently from you, I am most active in the morning, so that's when I do my creative work. And so just like I plan my day around myself and my own needs. And it's very helpful to own, to be aware of what's going on in my own consciousness, and have the meetings, for example, to be scheduled at the time that I am at the energy level that matches that.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's almost like I call that process, or the language that I use, just to remind myself to prepare for that sort of stuff. I call it setting the table, right? Before you sit down to a nice dinner, you have to set the table. You have to prepare things. Like, you don't just sort of you can grab something and go to the table, but if you really want to have a nice meal, you set the table, right? You prepare for the day. And you're saying that that's what you're doing, like managing your, I did some other research about managing your energy versus managing your time, managing your attention versus managing your time, right? There's like
and there's also a myth that goes with it, that like it has to be difficult or it has to take a lot of time. And sometimes it's just like, I put my meal in front of me and I just take a moment to take a deep breath and just look at my meal and remember that I can't see it without my glasses anymore. And just appreciate and just be present with that food. And it's still going to take the same amount of time that I usually take to have lunch, but with just that shift of starting with one deep breath, I completely changed my experience.
Exactly. Just breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, you engage your parasympathetic, the calming nervous system, and then can actually really have a profound effect.
Yes.
Thanks.
The breath, which is something that is available to us all the time, is I would say it's the single easiest tool to bring awareness to the present moment. And then just choose which quadrant you want to operate in that particular circumstance.
Exactly. Well, let's put a couple other people on the spot. I want to hear from our art professor and see, because I mean, obviously through the process of the artistic process, Janet, I'm talking about you now.
Yes, I do.
I'm just wondering, since you operate in a different work environment, one that might be more sensitive to some of the concepts that some of us technologists, entrepreneur types have, not been as sensitive to historically. Was one of the articles resonant with you, and any reflections on that article?
Well, I do work in different arenas, as a teacher, as a designer, for professional designer, for other work outside of, what I do, but I bring my artistic skills to it. And then in my own art world in my studio. So it's different ways of working, actually. And it's giving me something to think about, actually, how to maybe get out of a place where I'm not as productive as I want to be. I can look at these 4 things and go, which of these is going to help me right now get more productive, even if it's daydreaming, because daydreaming is, as we creative folks know, super valuable.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too. And one of the reasons I wanted to share these articles is, I think, especially a lot of us that are kind of used to, coming from the school. Well, as an example, I come from a Protestant work background, right? Both my grandfathers were farmers. Both of them were blue collar. They drove trucks and they were farmers. And they weren't big time farmers, they were small time farmers. And they farmed cotton. Both of them did, which is, like one of the insults in my family would be calling them a cotton picker. So, the Protestant work ethic, which has a strength, also has a weakness.
Everything does. Everything does.
Yeah. So just like, recognizing, if nothing else, like a way of recognizing, oh, wait, it appropriate, whether it's the article about being sad at work or the article about just, do you feel guilty that you didn't work 20 hours yesterday? I do.
Yeah, and that is an issue for me too at times. It's like, oh, I'm not getting enough done. Wait a minute. There's different ways of getting things done, first of all.
Exactly. Well, it's always an interesting perspective. It's one of the things that I appreciate about having a diverse group of entrepreneurs that we're connected to around the world, right? Because in a way, we can learn from each other in a way that, or whether it's technologist to artist to technologist, whether it's like the different frames and stuff like that. Let me do this. I'm going to start winding up and actually suggest David Nichols, one of our entrepreneurs that's in the Czech Republic. He started talking about this a little bit last time. David, if you're available, I'd love to have you come on and say, what did the Texan learn from the Czech from that standpoint? And like how part of what we're here to do as entrepreneurs, especially in this communal setting, is to learn from each other. Because we have this wide diversity of people, I always like, I know I benefit from that, but I want to bring it out for the show so other people can kind of hear that. David, what have you learned from a product and relaxation in Czech Republic?
I mean, I think we're here, working with the people that I've hired and managed here. You have to respect the culture is different. I was shocked at first when I would go out to lunch with my guys and they would all order beer, and we had to go back and do technical work, but in the Czech Republic, if you don't drink beer, you're not Czech pretty much, it's the highest beer consumption per capita in the world.
Really? Wow.
Yes. Yeah. Higher than Germany, higher than everywhere. Number one.
Wow.
And just things like in the States, if you're working in a U.S. environment and you're under pressure in your company and you got to do something, it's totally normal in the USA. You got to cancel your vacation. That's just not going to happen over here. You never do that. That would you just can't do it. You would, but I think that's good because everybody knows that people's vacations are going to be respected and stuff like that. And I think that if you let people work their own way, then they will find their own productivity if they're in the right job, right? So I've had also people I've managed, not here, but in Italy, but they weren't Italians. They were mostly from the UK and the USA and stuff like that. And they were really high achievers, but they had their own schedule, right? So I found out if I let them work from 3 p.m. till 2 a.m., they were getting everything done. You know, the customer would complain that they had to have meetings in the late afternoon. They weren't there in the morning, but the fact is they were absolutely critical. And just like 3 people were doing, you know, the majority of the work for this, you know, $30 million project. And, you know, by letting them work the way they wanted to, and not trying to micromanage them, because I didn't know what they were doing. They were experts in their own field. They got everything done, and we were able to deliver a really impressive project to the customer under very difficult circumstances. So I don't know, you know, I don't know. That's my personal experience. I don't know if it's any kind of words of wisdom, but.
Wait, but it's insight nevertheless, right? I mean, the thing that your story reminds me of is, so my first customer for my first startup was a bank in Mexico, right? This is the 90s. And, you know, I was an Austin young entrepreneur, 24, 25 years old, didn't really know anything about business. I show up in Mexico and they said yes, right? You know, it was a $250,000 project. They said yes. They said, we want you to use, I had come up with a way of interfacing to mainframes and databases and then bridging between the two, really advanced stuff. It's kind of like, you know, it's boring these days, but it's really advanced stuff.
Not always.
Well, yeah, no, I know it's right in line with the technology you're up to with what you're doing with AI. But the interesting thing about it was the first few lunches that I went to lunch with, the gentleman's name was Marco Cesar Gloria. He was my customer. And, you know, lunch wasn't until 2:00 in the afternoon. So I was absolutely starving because I'm used to the gringo lunch at 12. And it went till like 4:30. And the funny thing about it is for the first hour and a half of the lunch, all they did was talk to me about family. And like one of the guys that was higher up in the bank, or one of the owners of the bank, was at one of the lunches one time. And I remember I'm like, I just want to get to the work.
What country was this?
Mexico, in Guadalajara in 1994. And the thing that was interesting about that was Marco could tell that I was I'm like, come on, let's get some work done, you know, at the lunch table. And this other gentleman that I'm not sure, like after all these years, since he's a high net worth individual or stuff, that he'd want me to say his name. So I won't say his name, but the thing that what I found out later when I was like, Marco, why didn't we get stuff done? Blah, 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 blah. The thing that ended up happening was Marco said, you know, the whole reason that this other individual was taking so much time to ask me about how my family was, as we were drinking shots of tequila. You know, like there's a drink called a bandera, which means flag in Spanish. And it's like one shot of tequila, one shot of lime juice, and one shot of what they call sangrita, which is kind of like Bloody Mary mix. You sip them. You sip a little bit at a time. And we're sitting there. Marco actually told me, you know what was happening is this other gentleman was interviewing you. It's like, how are you going to take care of my project is how you take care of your family. And if you're not taking care of your family, more than likely, you're not going to take care of the project. That was the first lesson at the table. The second lesson on the table was what David's pointing out, that this is what these guys did. They took their time. It was a 2.5-hour lunch, and drink was involved. So, you know, the barriers to how you might be holding yourself go down. You know, it's the same thing I was referring to earlier when I was talking about the Project Entomb in Russia, as we sat there and they brought out the finest vodka that I've ever had. And they're like, we went through this big bottle and then they brought another big bottle to the table. And it was like, it wasn't about drinking. It was about creating communion of sorts. And it's really interesting. And it was really helpful for me. So every once in a while, I will go to a lunch here at one of our favorite restaurants and I allow myself to have a drink. It's still a weird thing in some ways, but it's interesting. I know a couple of
y'all. I see it, it's not that you were not getting stuff done. You're getting different stuff done.
Yeah, getting the same stuff done in a different way, right? It's definitely. Paulina, you said that you wanted to chime in on this as well.
Yes. So I'm going to shift a little bit apart from the culture. There's a lot of details you've dived in. I absolutely love hearing. but I also wanted to chime in about education. When I was in Moscow, my school started at 9 and we finished at 2:30. When I moved here, to hear that kids have to get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, you have to be at school by 7, 7:30, it was absolutely just a shock to me, let alone everything else. And some of the studies that I've read, especially as you get into middle school and high school, with test taking and productivity of, kids doing well in school, it has been parts, I will find articles that I'll post in our entire community chat, but there are articles that confirm that a child's brain, middle school, high school, and just even in an adult, you don't fully start working until 10 a.m. And so to demand students to be taking major exams at 7 o'clock in the morning, whenever they're just waking up, it's not realistically something that has been addressed. And so to me, I find that not only are we talking about productivity as far as entrepreneurs and the different schedules, but it also stems all the way back to education and kids.
Yeah, I know. That's my excuse for why I say sometimes to my European partners, I'm like, hey, my brain doesn't really start till 10 o'clock. I'm starting. But it is interesting as we're working around the world. I know that I'm one of those people that, every once in a while I'll wake up in the middle of the night at 4 or 5 in the morning and be really productive right around then, and then want to go back to sleep because my brain really wants to wake up around, I get working around that same time. We all have a natural flow. And I think the main thing is to figure out how to take advantage of that, especially concerning entrepreneurship and stuff like that. Hey, so right now we have two other entrepreneurs, one in Haiti and one of them in Nigeria. So I want to kind of go off the topic for a second, because I would love to hear from either one of them, Franz or Emmanuel. If one of you is able to come off of mute, I know sometimes that we catch you at different times of the day and times that might be difficult for you to share. But if either one of you, you don't even have to talk about the topic at hand. I just love to hear your voice and hear what's happening on the ground. Is either one of you available to speak live? I know that sometimes, yeah, Manuel, how's it going in Lagos? Congratulations on launching the new application. Congratulations on launching the new set of clinic. Tell us what's happening.
Yeah, so thanks, Kevin. Good evening from Lagos, Nigeria. So a lot has been happening this period for us because we've secured certain partnerships, and it's just like a whole lot of work at the time. It's like I'm running like 3 startups in one. So the clinic has been launched. Calva, which is also a company we registered in the US, the software company. We've also launched that. And lastly, we launched a medical logistics and we partner with the federal government agencies for medical samples analysis. So that partnership, we just finalized it yesterday. So which means we can be doing laboratory services as well. And also that's just a whole lot in one. So we're working towards full execution at this point. So it's a whole lot, Kevin, actually. A whole lot.
Oh, it's so great to see. I mean, because I know that especially during the last year of COVID, it's been kind of rough there. So I'm real excited that you're able to pick up and engage. And by the way, I'll do a real quick shout out. During my birthday last year, a bunch of y'all, in fact, Jello, let's make sure that we post this onto my Facebook, or we'll after we post this onto YouTube, we'll post this. Last year for my birthday, a lot of y'all donated money to our nonprofit, and that was $1,000 that got donated. It's actually going to go to support Emmanuel's work. We hadn't reported on that yet because there were some difficulties on the banking systems and stuff like that. Melvin Hall, who's one of our board of director members of the nonprofit, who's here in the with us on the studio right now, is taking it on. And for the people who donated, I want to make sure that we post back to that same donation time and say, hey, look what's happening in Manuel. Look what you're supporting. Manuel's doing great work in Lagos. And Manuel, is there anything else that you'd like to make a request to the people that are listening that you'd like to share about?
Yeah, the thing is, also we recently partnered with the local government in the Riverine area. So it just imagine this is that we've been able to we get certain vaccines also now from the government through that partnership. So what's happening is those on the highland are getting vaccinated every day, but there's like a 13% when we looked at the coverage rate, which means this is over like 13,000 children we are impacting through that partnership. But there's a 30% in the riverine area that they don't have a health facility there to get vaccinated. So those 13% are not being vaccinated. But the thing is, these are the same set of persons, babies on the island and the babies on the riverine area are the same human beings. But just that it's hard getting these vaccines passing the waterways to that riverine area. So they only visit there like twice in a year. So most of the kids there are not getting vaccinated. So that's been at the back of my my bucket list on how do we help this person? How do we, because it's the same set of kids, but somehow by them being in that riverine area is making it difficult because we need to use a boat to access there and a whole lot. So they've been neglected. So those are the 13% not being carried. But and if there's any outbreak, I fear it's going to come up from that place, that area in the is like a village setting as well. So those are something I've been thinking. I was with them 2 days ago having a meeting with them again as well. We've been having series of meetings in the work. So we have a whole lot to impact there. So that's a new something I'm thinking of. How do we help this person to solve that problem by actually making the health facility, making a functional health facility in that community to cover up the riverine area. So the health workers don't need to be taking maybe once or twice a year, and also the kids get vaccinated. So that's something I'm thinking of. How do we solve that? It's a huge potential to impact. We can be doing close to 50,000, impacting 50,000 lives every year by.
Well, so let's do this. Let's make sure that we actually create a point of access. If you have ideas for that, Emmanuel, if you're open to it, part of what I'd like to ask is to have you post that as a request into the request area in Slack. And then community, part of the thing I'd love to have all of y'all do is let's have that idea about how might we get, how could we support Emmanuel in the work that he's doing to share insight. Perhaps there's a solution or other ideas that might be possible. I'd like to create more interaction. And the best part about it is it's not, don't send it to me directly, community. Let's do this on the tools that we actually have so that we can interact. I tell you what, if nothing else, Emmanuel, on LinkedIn, since we do seem to be getting a lot of interaction on LinkedIn because we're now posting these videos into the streaming, you might even post the request there and say, hey, I'm the guy who actually talked about this at the end of the session today. And that way people actually, people outside of even our community can weigh in and say, hey, this is what we're looking at. Will you do that, Emmanuel?
Yes, Kevin, I would do that. I would do that. I would.
Perfect. I tell you what, and if there's any difficulties on finding it, Jello, make sure that Emmanuel gets that link just so he can actually, let's make it as easy as possible for him to be able to interact with others. Because this is the whole reason that the community, like a little bit of insight can go a long way on that. I'd love to see that. And then Emmanuel, Melvin, and you two, y'all will get together about working out the birthday funds. Thank you to my community for actually celebrating my birthday by supporting this entrepreneur, this doctor's work. That's much more meaningful than just a random gift from me, and because I know that Emmanuel will actually take those funds and put them to good use. So real excited to see you present today. Look forward to catching up with you soon, and keep us in the loop. But let's see how we can support you in the work that you're doing. Cool. Well, we're coming to the end of our time together. I know I had actually asked Franz as well to share. He sent me a note through the chat saying that he's got really unstable internet right now. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and make sure that that on the upcoming type of things, I'll get him to shoot a little video, tell us what's happening in Cap 10 Haiti with his project. He's been training people to actually, or training a number of entrepreneurs to trade in cryptocurrency. I'd love to hear about that project. So we'll get him to do it like Franz, if you can hear me, just do a short 3-minute kind of thing and share it with us, and we'll share it in the future. If you're not on our email list, or you want to be on our country manager list, or you want to be part of our mentorship group, go to techranch.com/connect. We'll continue to update more things like how to gain access to our Mighty Network, how to gain access to our Facebook group. Some of that stuff's not on there yet, but this URL is kind of like the clearinghouse URL to make sure that you're on all the things. So join us there. And with that, we'll go ahead and close up today's session. Thank you to all of you that joined us, both in the Zoom session. Thank you to everyone that joined us on the LinkedIn video. I really do appreciate those of you all that, like I just heard from a friend in Uruguay who said, hey, I got to follow this on LinkedIn. Thank you for sharing it there. It is really great to catch up with her. At some point, we're going to have her join us. Her name is Valerie, a health entrepreneur based in Montevideo, Uruguay. And so real excited to see that LinkedIn is doing the LinkedIn thing on making the net go even wider and getting back in contact. We'll look forward to having more of y'all involved. It's always my honor to be a part of a community that's driven by a community of entrepreneurs that are driven by vision and values. Let's go change the world for the better together. Thank you all for today, and keep up the great work and stay productive, but don't have productivity guilt. Okay, see you guys.